I'm partially glad that people can't see us dancing before the show starts every time, and then also sort of sad that they have to miss out on that aspect of
I groove to that track so much every time. Like, I forget
every
I'm
time.
doing it. It's so good.
I saw Lev's hands at the edge of the laser cam there, and I wasn't sure if he was, doing some important laser business or maybe if he
Jazz
was
hands
just,
for sure.
I was jamming.
Yeah, okay, good stuff.
Cool.
Welcome, everyone. So happy to have you here with us today. Once again, it's another Friday stream from Trotec. My name is Don. I'm joined again by James this week, and Lev is on the camera. Hello, guys.
Hey, what's up?
How's it going?
Super duper.
Good. Like it says on the screen there, definitely say hello. Drop a little comment in the chat. Let us know where you're watching from. Today, we're going to be covering, what is a pretty popular topic for us. We're often asked about material settings, and although we have our new software, Trotec Ruby, that is on the way, we wanted to take some time with classical job control because, essentially the gist of how it works. LCD, how's it going? Welcome back. The gist of how this works, and it's probably my favorite thing about working with lasers in general, is that once you understand sort of the how-tos of finding the right settings and working with materials, like sort of that working by subtraction, you can then apply those same principles to any material you ever want to work with, as long as it's laser safe. I mean, am I right in saying that, James? That's sort of a pretty general statement, but
that's how I do it anyway.
Yeah, and I mean, James has engraved anything under the sun, you name it. So at this point, I feel safe to say,
There's some weird stuff over the years, that's for sure. Things we don't want to talk about.
I was going to say, we had one not too long ago. We had somebody join our stream who mentioned they did we tell you about this? The ninja engraving, where you engrave a banana. And I guess because of the nature of the skin on the banana, it only shows up several hours later, so you can engrave a hello message to someone and leave it on their desk, and then suddenly a magic, like, disappearing ink message shows up on the banana. Hey, Leo, thank you so much for joining us. That's awesome, joining from Austria, the HQ. I was going to say, really quick here in the beginning, I want to introduce James. James, if you've never joined us before, is soon to be your very favorite person on YouTube. James is our salesperson in British Columbia, Canada, but more than that, James has, what did we say the other day? So I got to talk to James the other day for an article that's going to be going up on our website. And you said you had 20 years of experience in engraving and like 35 years of Corel Draw, right?
21 years of engraving now, and 35 years, I guess about 35 years of Corel Draw.
Man. So. Morning, Jason. Morning, Joey. So again, I don't want to, kind of go with the general statement, but at least on my end, I know this is true. Would you say that material settings, out of all the customer calls you get, might be in one of those like top 3 things that you get asked about all the time?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, someone will call and say, hey, I have this material. What setting should I use? Well, what material is it? Oh, yeah. It's wood. Okay. Yeah. What laser do you have, and how thick? What kind? What finish? There's so much that goes into settings that we don't, that you don't understand, and so that's why I mean, it's nice to start with something, and I basically the rule of thumb, the biggest one that I can say is that if you only have one piece to work with and the customer didn't give you a sacrifice piece to test, it's time to try to find a place on that piece to quietly mark a tiny little dot. If that's impossible, gosh, I feel bad for you. I mean, charge a lot. Back in my old life, when I was doing engraving for money, I would, if somebody just gave me, let's say they gave me a firearm or something like this and said, here, engrave this, and you're like, I don't know what the coating is. They couldn't tell me anything about it. It was like, well, how much is it going to cost me to replace this thing?
Yeah. Payment in advance, please.
Yeah, exactly. So it's really tough. Always get a sacrifice piece when you can. If you're accepting things like firearms, chances are you've been in the business quite a while.
Yep.
And you kind of you don't just have to know engraving. You have to know a little bit of like about all the materials as well. So over my years, like, I've had to learn what materials do. So I've had to learn a little bit about metallurgy and a little bit about plastics and a little bit about paints and about powder coating and about different types of anodizing and coatings. And, you get to know more and more and more about the materials that you use. And the more you learn about materials, the more easy it's going to be to engrave them. Just like if you're a driver and you like to drive, knowing how an engine works allows you to drive better, because you're driving for your engine, or you're driving like I took an air brakes course a long time ago, and so once you take an air brakes course, you leave about 6 or 7 car lengths before you pull in front of a semi on the highway, because you know the mechanics you know what the mechanics take to stop a semi truck on the road. And this is the same thing here. If you know the materials you're working with and you know the properties of these, and it doesn't take much. It takes an evening of research on what wood resin is, or these kinds of things, to find out exactly what materials do when you heat them. And there's some that are toxic when you heat them, and this is why we need to learn this. But knowing the material, first of all, allows you to know kind of what settings you're going to be using.
Yes, I think so. Just in the beginning here, and we have a great question from LCD there that I'll pull up in a quick second here. But I wanted to put some ground rules now and for the future for anyone who might be watching this video on YouTube. First and foremost, hello. Please like and subscribe. So a couple of the big things that I would mention, and they tie right into what James is saying, is this, like any other art or creative thing you're going to be doing, is a lot about practice and learning. The very key, sometimes very subtle ways that things are different. So, if you like to play guitars, for example, when you buy your first electric guitar, you're not going to know the difference between one pickup and another pickup, and the very fine, differences in sound and things. Hey, Johnny, welcome back. Afternoon. But as you get used to working with something, you start to learn you start to recognize those little minutiae and the little tiny things that are different from one to another. Yeah. In those beginning stages, though, I will say, number one, James makes the most important point, I think. If it's a material that doesn't come from us, get the MSDS sheet if you can. Make sure that thing is going to be safe. There are some general, there are some general, sort of guidelines about things you don't want to put in your laser. Obviously, things like PVC, vinyls, for that same reason. Explosives, yeah, bananas.
Human beings.
Yeah, exactly. YouTube's going to show you some crazy things, and the internet is going to tell you all kinds of just, differing opinions and things like that. The safest thing you can always do if you're buying a material from someone and it's brand new, get the material safety data sheet, check what's on there. It explicitly will say what will happen when that material is heated. Number two, you're going to see sort of over on the side here, Lev is very kindly running some matrix files on our materials. If you guys have the opportunity, as James says, if you have a scrap piece of something, the matrix file is your best friend. You can build one yourself, of course, but the general principle is, to sort of choose one of the various sort of vectors that the laser allows you to set. So the principal ones of sort of power, speed, maybe the Z offset. Keep one of them constant. So in this case, Lev he's holding there a piece of walnut, I believe. That's the walnut, yeah.
Yeah, sorry, this is the walnut, and this, I believe, is...
maple, I think?
Yeah, it's probably maple.
It's not maple, but it's alder.
See, James,
most likely.
James knows the... this is what happens when you work with wood for a long time.
I do.
So is that's the engraving power test, is it, Lev?
Yes. So, I don't know, Don, if you want to go through it, I can kind of show it from start to finish. And
absolutely.
Yeah. Just let me open up Corel. So we're doing it in Corel. There's actually, Don, if you want to mention on YouTube, if you type in Trotec material settings, Josephine did like a 30-minute in-depth video about this process. But so we're kind of recreating it a little bit here. But so let me just show you guys.
We are using the files that are available for download in the description of that video too. So if you want to download these after the after the stream. They're available for you at any time for free. She also runs through how to import them into both Illustrator and CorelDRAW and sort of how to use them properly. So some general sort of tips for, the best way to go about using them. But so as you can see, there's 4 different kinds that she's set up for you here. The ones at the bottom are the ones that Lev is using right now. So they're power engrave tests. And essentially what they do is they use the facility for the laser. I believe there are 16 different RGB color codes that you can preset. And basically what it allows you to do is it's using each individual RGB color code to up that value by a different interval on each one. So on the far left here,
the color itself doesn't up the interval, but the people who are new or are looking for a laser, you can set whatever you want those colors to do.
Exactly. And in fact, that's shown here. So Lev is running the one on the left where we've set the power of our engraving up 5 percentage points on each color, so that as he engraves this whole vector, or this kind of graph of colors, it's going to get gradually more and more and more powerful as it goes down. So by the end, you're going to see what, if you had engraved that piece with 20% power, 25%, 30, 35, etc., all the way up to 95, you're going to see what the result will be with each power setting, and then choose the one that you like the best. The middle graph sort of covers the low range end of things a little bit more in depth. So it goes up by intervals of 3 and covers 3 to 48%. And then the top is the opposite. It goes from 51 to 96. And it's as simple as that. So for this, the power is varying with each step. So the speed remains constant. On ones where we're varying the speed, your power will remain constant. And basically, it's just a way for you to test if you're not sure how fast you want to go, how much power you need. You keep one thing, always the same. You have your control group, essentially, and then you vary the other one very incrementally. And as you can see in the result that Lev got there, it gives you an idea of, where you're going to be at.
Yeah, just for those that, James, if those that don't know anything about lasers or very, very beginners, if we can go through what the colors represent in job control. This is our set. Yeah, go ahead, Jim. Sorry.
Well, these are very standard colors for industrial applications for different types of machines. There's a lot of machines use the RGB color code as differentiators between different applications. There's certain CNC machines use these RGB colors to pick tools, for instance. So we've just used the same set of industrial RGB standard colors to represent different layers, I guess you'd say. Some people call it layers. A lot of people, when they're first looking, say, oh, look at all the colors I can do with the laser. This is really fun. But as we know, it's a subtractive process. We're just taking away. So these layers are just so that we can produce colors on our graphics program and know that, when we see black, it's going to engrave, and when we see red, it's going to cut. In this case, we're engraving the whole way down. The black is going to engrave, red is going to engrave blue, all the way down there. Our power might stay constant, our speed may stay constant, but our frequency might change throughout every color, or our Z offset or our focus might change throughout things. And so it's a really good way to really fine tune. What I normally do is I'll do if I don't know anything about a material, and it's rare these days, but years ago, if I don't know anything about a material, I will go from say 50% speed, and I'll go from 10% power all the way to 100% power, and I'll find out which one looks best. And let's say at between 60 and 70% power are pretty good. Then now I'll go with that power at 60% at the top black, 70% at the bottom, and just go through increments between there, and then fine tune those. And so this is how we use these colors to fine tune what our perfect settings are going to be.
Mm-hmm. I'll add to that too, in saying, wood is a great example for a couple reasons. And we'll, maybe we'll get into this later a little bit of, when you're looking for tips and tricks on processing particular materials. But if somebody brings you, wood they'd like to engrave, perhaps it's a portrait or something like that, and they say, I want this to look great, or I want it to, be a perfect representation of this picture of my dad, or whatever it is. The issue is that with different colors of wood and different power settings, you're going to get a darker or a lighter engraving. And trying to judge what somebody thinks is the most aesthetically pleasing is really, really hard, right? What you like may not be what somebody else likes. So you can sort of do a matrix like this on a test piece of that material, show them all the different results and say, okay, like, let me know which color you like best. And then I know that I can replicate it because you've got the exact, settings with the process that James just described. And then that way too, if you use the exact settings that they agree to ahead of time, there's no sort of miscommunication. The customer's already agreed that, this is exactly the color that I want. This is exactly the finish that I want. And then that way everything is sort of decided ahead of time. There's no, questions about how it's going to turn out. Because realistically, I mean, we have a piece in the showroom here in Mississauga that has the same picture of Marilyn Monroe in sort of like an Andy Warhol style done in a grid of 4. But because they're doing all different power settings, in the top right, you can barely see her. And in the bottom, she's been what looks like kind of wood burned in, right? Like dark engraving. And what people would like best is completely up to them, right? There's no way of knowing ahead of time. Sorry, go ahead, Liv.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, so let's say here I could just run my fingers through and you could kind of see the depth. Well, you can't see it, but I can feel it. And if your customer can say how deep do they want the engraving, for example, for this particular type of wood. So let's say this is the one that I like the best, the 80 power. So I would go back to my my artwork file here. So the 80 would be this purple, basically. So then I know, so then I know in job control, this is the color that I want. This is the speed settings, the power setting. So it's 80% power, 100% speed, and that will give me that exact laser setting.
Yeah. Now, when a customer says, "Okay, this is great. This depth is nice, but gosh, you know what? I used to use a different provider, and theirs was always darker."
Yeah.
At that point, you take that setting, and then you take the setting higher than that one. Use the same speed and power that you were using for the higher one, and now adjust your Z offset, all 16 Z offsets, and now you've got the same speed and power of the perfect depth that they like, and the one above it. So the 80 and the 85 in this case. Go with the settings for the 85 for speed and power. But now with 1 through 16 on all those colors, you're going to go, 0.02 offset, 0.03 offset, 0.04, all the way down, and you're going to run it again. And now suddenly, boom, you have a grade between, nice and crisp, clear engraving and a nice black engraving. And now you pick that. And so you can run down that rabbit hole quite a bit. But when you do that, you start to get to know the material, and you start to get to know your laser a bit more too. Like on your off time, this is a great thing you can be doing is just be showing yourself the settings. I mean, let alone the customers.
Mm-hmm.
Showing yourself how the laser reacts in different settings. Start to play with frequency bit of the equation as well. So
yeah, can I just add one quick thing, James? That's a great point. I think customers, after they saw that matrix video with what we're doing here, they thought this is the standard process of getting your material settings. So that's actually the more advanced way of getting your material settings. I mean, we have an entire database of materials. You guys can see my screen here, right? So, for example, if it was maple, there's already predefined settings from Austria, from Trotec HQ. They do the testing. So, James, what would be, can you kind of talk about the difference between beginners who would start with this database and go into testing these kind of matrices?
Well, I mean, what you mean, like just going from our standard database and then going to these, or?
Well, my question really is, what would you recommend for beginners? Would you recommend doing these kind of power engraving tests versus going directly to the material database that's already predefined by Trotec?
Use the predefined one first, because we've done a lot of work to make it okay. Mm-hmm. Now, all lasers are different, and all materials different. Most material is different. Like if it's Trolleys, it's probably pretty good. The settings we have are probably pretty good. But if it's wood, it's always a little different. I would start. I always tell my customers these settings that we give you, they're a good start. And now it's time for you to fine tune, because what might have been good for the person testing these for distribution might not be good for you or your customer. And so I say, take these and start with that, and now maybe make a matrix that's 15% under all the way to 15% over what that setting is, and then see how that looks. If it's still not good enough, maybe go 30% over. You'll see which way you have to go when you start playing with these.
Right. I think you're exactly right, James. The key thing is to say that it's a starting point. I think when it comes to using one of our materials, if you bought it from us in particular, obviously those are the materials that it's been tested for. If you have your own wood or your own plastic, I mean, by all means, of course, that's completely up to you. But the settings then very likely might not be as effective as they would be with, one of our the ones that were tested with the machine, that kind of thing. Another really quick thing to keep in mind is, I think I have been guilty of this, certainly, is particularly when I first started at Trotec, of giving people the impression that the settings that are in the pre-existing material database are the correct settings. The answer is there are no correct settings. The correct settings are the ones that you or your customer likes the best, realistically, within, safety parameters, of course. But I think at the end of the day, one of the great things about lasers is that it does open you up to being able to experiment and decide, what you think is the best option. And finally, I want to mention too, Johnny made a very good point. Which
I was just going to say that. Yeah.
If you have any questions, that's what we're here for. Please don't ever hesitate to reach out to us. We don't do this seminar because we don't like getting questions about material settings. In fact, it's a good opportunity for us to be sure that we're trying to help people be safe and get the best result, particularly as James described, if somebody brings you their, great grandfather's World War I rifle or whatever that you only have one of in the world. But the other big thing is, we have that experience, right, of working with so many materials that, we can hopefully give you some insight that might not be available to you. Would you mind if I threw you some questions here, James, really quick?
Yeah, let's do some questions.
So I had an early one here that came in from LCD. So he asked, if you have a really good exhaust, then would all of the following be correct? So any plastic is fine to cut if it passes the torch or copper green test, and if you're okay with having a melting mess in your laser potentially.
Yes, yeah. I mean, I have one customer in particular who cuts a forbidden material.
Substance. Yeah,
a forbidden material. I'm not going to say substance. That sounds bad. A forbidden material.
Plutonium.
Yes.
Yeah.
And they know the risks.
Yep.
They know the risks to health and to machine wear, and they do it anyway. They have fantastic exhaust, and it's industrially filtered. And when they realize that every 5 years they're going to push their laser into a dumpster, and that's cool with me, of course. But so. If you're prepared to clean your laser, let's say you have a material you have no idea with, you've got your CO2 fire extinguisher sitting beside your laser, you've got your great exhaust, maybe you even have some kind of a mask on that will protect you. You can, sure, why not? I mean, I always read the safety manual first before you process anything. I mean, you have signed a waiver saying we're not responsible for the crazy materials you're going to put in your laser, so it's not coming back on me. But as Johnny says, not Johnny, who is a LCD says, if you can put a piece of material in, and just to start with I always start with a tiny dot. What nothing really bad can happen with a tiny dot. You try that, and I always give it a little smell. Oh, that smells a lot like vinyl. Okay, I'm not going to do that then. Yeah. So I'm not going to accept that job. Sorry guys, this is vinyl. Take it to someone else.
Yeah. Can I maybe suggest a different material that might give you a similar?
Right. So if you're prepared for like a melted plastic mess at the bottom of your laser, and you don't mind cleaning your grid out, no problem. you can do that. But
Absolutely.
just know that some materials are toxic. Now, Lev, is this a power speed one, or is this a focus?
This is all still a power test. So the speed is the constant. The speed is 100% speed. But I'm just showing you guys how it reacts to different materials. So the yellow here is Trolleys.
Trolleys, yellow, black, yeah.
Yeah, sorry, I'm just gonna bring this
when
up.
When I first saw it was turning that black, I was afraid for a second that was I was thinking like, uh-oh, like what material is that?
No, it's yellow. It's yellow black Trolleys.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, and this is the acrylic. Sorry,
Yep.
I'm just gonna.
In the woods.
Yeah, exactly.
Very cool. I will say, I think. Oh, that's excellent. Okay, so that's all the same matrix test, and you can see between the different materials, you get a really. I mean, obviously the nature of the material plays a big difference, but you can see how that comes into, really stark importance when you're doing, if it's a sign from Trolleys or if you're going to do something in acrylic.
Pause there, Lev.
Oh, so the acrylic?
Right, no, on the walnut. To the new folks there, look at how the white at the beginning. What this is caused from is there's a finish, and so we haven't even touched the wood where it goes white. What we're doing is we're roughing up the finish, just as if we were engraving acrylic, and so that's an effect that you can get. And once people start using Ruby, they're going to learn a little bit more about effects.
Oh, that's really cool.
And so this is an effect you can get on finished wood. It's by engraving it. You're just basically just roughing the surface of the wood as opposed to even touching the wood. You're affecting the finish, and that's a really cool effect that you can get, and you can use that to your advantage when processing photographs and things like that, or not really photographs, but more like pictures, like clip art, logos, things like that, where you can get a brown image, a black image, and a very white image too. And so you can actually produce some colors and stuff like that on different woods, and that's why it's really good to run matrices like this on your materials.
Yeah. Well, and to your point, I mean, you can see you can see, as James is saying, around the 50% power there, you can see finally where we started to hit the wood. Mm-hmm. But what's cool about this is you can even see at 90% power on a light piece of wood like this, a typical engraving doesn't really show up all that dark. But that white is already dark. Bright.
Yeah.
Now, this is the walnut. You're right. Sorry. Yeah.
If he was to do another matrix with Z offset and actually take the thing out of focus every step,
I can do that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And one thing people quickly learn, and maybe I can stop some of the new people from having issues, is that when you're doing a Z offset, an automatic Z offset with the colors, and you stop the laser halfway through, it doesn't come back down to its 0 point, and you have to refocus. So that's really important to know that you have to refocus at the end of that. I've had a lot of people be like, I don't know what's going on. This I can't get this thing to work when I'm doing Z offset. So make sure that if you stop the program halfway through, because basically the laser's saying do this, go down a tenth of an inch, do this, go down a tenth of an inch, keep doing that, and then at the end it says now go back up to 0. But if you stop, like LCD says, learn the hard way. If you stop it, it's not going to give the laser that signal to go back to 0 again. And so unless you have your autofocus on, it's best to always focus if you stop it halfway.
Leah actually asked a question regarding focus and lenses here that I want to touch on, but as a sort of aside to it, I wanted to mention, sort of touching back on something that James mentioned earlier. Keep in mind too that the results that you're seeing can also be dependent on upkeep. So Leah asks about potentially using different lenses. So, different size lenses, and, should she repeat the test with each lens, that sort of thing. And Johnny answered it very well in the chat, but just for anybody who might be listening, another thing too is to consider if you start to see weird, results in your matrices, check your mirrors, check your lenses, that sort of thing. Like make sure you're cleaning them. And that's also going to make sure that you get the the proper result. You don't want to do a test for a customer with a dirty lens, get a weird result, and then when you clean it and do it again, get something different, right?
Yeah, or if you haven't had a preventative maintenance in a couple of years,
right?
You could have a out of alignment laser, and a lot of people think, oh, my laser engraves, really good on this one side and not so good on the other side, so my bed must be out of level or something. Well, chances are it's just a mirror is out of alignment somewhere, and this is why we offer preventative maintenance for machines to make them run like a factory new machine as you go. If you haven't had a preventative maintenance in a while, it's worth the small bit of money to get one of our techs to your place to just have a look at the whole thing, because an out of alignment laser is going to change your settings as well.
Everything. Yeah.
Because the laser's coming into the lens at an angle. It does end up coming straight, but it's altering the properties of the beam and perhaps taking some of that power away. And that's really important. Really important to make sure your laser's in alignment as well. But different lenses do different things to different effects. And so when you're doing these matrices, basically make sure you change it. I have an art school in Vancouver, a prominent art school in Vancouver, and one of their projects was to produce matrix cards for every lens and for every material. And they have a wall, a 15-foot wall with little pegs, cool. And there's five or six little chips on every peg for what they want. So when a new student comes in and says, "Oh, I want stainless steel Sir Mark," there we go. They drop it down. They can engrave it perfectly, and they get their settings right very quickly.
To be honest, like doing this sort of stuff is not all that different from taking home paint chips and showing, like putting them up on your wall and trying to figure out which one you think will suit it best, right? It's just a matter of, kind of. Sorry, go ahead, Lev.
Oh no, I was just gonna say. So I did the Z offset test. So now you can see all the power is the same, 75. Back the other one we did, it was a different power settings here. The speed is the same at 100. Everything's the same except the Z offset. So James, can you tell us what the Z offset does?
So a positive number in that Z offset is going to drop the bed down. It's going to give you more room between the lens and the surface of the material. So in black, we have a power 75, speed 100, and a Z offset of 0, which means exactly 2 inches, perfectly in focus. And as it goes down, you can see there's a 1/10 of an inch. Thanks, Vanna White. A 10th, or not a 10th, a 10th thou. A 10th thou drop, because you're in inches here, right? Yeah. 10th thou drop from perfectly in focus, 20th thou drop, 30th thou, all the way down, past 1/8 of an inch out of focus. And then at the end of that, it goes back into focus again. And if you want to just full screen that laser cam there, we can see. Oops, there we go. Look at me and my big mouth there. We can see that original image 000 that Lev has, that was our best one on our last hit. And for a lot of people, especially people starting out, they're like, well, I guess that's the best I can do. And the customer's like, yeah, okay, I guess. Yeah. And they ship it like that without testing the Z offset. Now look at these other ones, like that second column, they look rich and deep. So every time you put it whoa, I'm getting dizzy.
Yeah, rich and deep, like James'
sorry.
voice.
Rich and deep, like my wallet. No, I'm just kidding. As you put it out of focus and get it darker, you're trading a little bit of detail. And so if we had serifs, let's say, on some of that text, you would see that some of the serifs might not render quite right, and you'd need to up the power in order to render some of the serifs. So having a matrix like this is very, very good to do to try to find what is your best bet for the customer. And now you see that I would say like an eighth of an inch out of focus in this particular wood has the best contrast.
Yeah, the funny thing is that like the depth is exactly the same, like when I run my fingers across. But yeah, these ones are definitely better than these ones, and this one is in focus, and it's one of the worst ones.
Lev, I want to address something here that Leah brought up, and I think is a very good point. Something Josephine mentions in the video. Would you be able to bring up job control again really quick?
Yeah, sure. 1 sec.
Yeah, no problem. So Leah pointed out, and Johnny agrees with her, absolutely. So she says, copy and pasting settings and creating your own name per lens. You can see on the left side there, Lev is in a part of our materials settings database that I've created called Matrices Test. There's a subgroup for cut power tests, for cut speed tests, and for power engraving tests. Leah's exactly right. If you preset these ahead of time, not only will you be able to complete this much more quickly, but then also it's reusable for any material, and you don't have to go to the tedium of rebuilding it each time. But then also it's just a way for you to refer back. So if you want to check something like James is talking about with your alignment, and you've done a matrices on a piece of walnut 3 months ago, and you pull out the exact same file and the exact same material again, and you try it and it looks different, then like, oh, maybe something is kind of wonky. Another thing with the material database that Lev was just showing is, and not many people necessarily know this, but you can lock it. You can set an admin and lock it behind a password. And then, like in James's example at a school, there's no chance for, what happens in our showrooms constantly, which is, we're all using the lasers. We all come up, we just pick whatever material setting happens to be there. We fix, we change it to whatever it is we think we need and we go. But that means that whatever the material setting that was there before that maybe James was doing yesterday is now poof, right, gone.
Don Mike isn't here to defend himself, so
yeah. Well,
hi Mike.
He's not here, so but yeah,
and I've done it to Mike. And the thing is, like, at the end of the day, particularly if you're working in a shop where you have a customer that comes back every 6 months to get the same set of name tags, you want to be sure that you have those material settings saved behind a lock and key, so that all you have to do is go back and every single time it's there, and you don't have to do this experimenting, next time necessarily. They have something that they love, they can always come to you for it, and that's that kind of thing.
In my old life, I started a program whereby if we were making name tags, signs, this kind of thing, if they were small enough, I would make an extra one every single time, and I put it in a photo album, like where you save baseball cards or what have you, right? I put it in a photo album so that when they came back, I could pull that one out and compare it to the one that I just did, and say, okay, yeah, these look the same, and send it out again. Because I see too often it's like you'll see the same restaurant. Remember when we used to go to restaurants?
In the before times.
in the same restaurant, you'll have two people with the same shape and size and format of name tag, but they'll both look different, and you're like, who engraved that?
Well, I thought you were going to go a different way. I was going to say, the funny thing is, you can go to a restaurant twice and order the same dish, and it's different both times.
Different chef. That's it. It does happen, but we try to mitigate this.
I think the thing is too that it's one of the benefits of lasers. It's one of the things that, like, consistency and ease of repeating jobs is one of the things that lasers do best. So we want to be sure to sort of, put you in a place where, that happens every time. There's no real manual dexterity to running a laser. No offense intended, Lev, at this moment. But, like, the laser is doing the majority of the work for you. It just relies on you to sort of give it something that it can understand in advance, right? So, realistically, as long as you're doing the upkeep, as James said, and you're kind of taking care of it, the laser should hopefully give you those exact same results every single time.
James, can you talk a little bit about specifically the acrylic? So I know when you go out of focus on acrylic, it becomes clear. When you're in focus, you actually get the white engraving. Now, you would think, well, why do I need a clear acrylic? But I remember Mike, all these years and years ago, he actually engraved clear so he can do like a rub and buff, like acrylic paint on the back to actually have like a reverse effect. So, I mean, why does that happen? Why is there clear engraving versus white engraving on acrylic?
when you're completely in focus, you're doing more blasting of the material. You're vaporizing the material. You're basically turning it into dust. And now everybody should go onto their favorite online superstore and purchase a electronic microscope immediately, because they're cheap and they're awesome. And the first thing you're going to look at is your finger. But when you put that electric microscope, the computer-powered electric microscope, onto this thing, what you're going to see is like a million little blasts. In that, you're going to see these lines of actually vaporized material. And so basically the laser hits it, splits it apart almost atomically. And it turns it into dust. As we go down as we start to take it out of focus, the laser becomes less of a blasting and more of a sophisticated heat beam. And it's melting, it's superheating the material. So what it's doing is it's basically still vaporizing in some ways, but it's more melting the material. So we're turning it more into a gas and less into a dust. And as it gets clearer, if you paint fill, that paint is going to come through much more rich because you're looking through a window, a clear window, as opposed to a frosted window. So if you see on this example on the screen here, 0.00, if I filled that with black and looked through the acrylic from the other side, it would be dark. It would be like probably 60% gray, because the black is going to fill around all of the blasted white acrylic, and it's going to show black. But 0.015 is going to show quite black, maybe 96% black. And that's the difference between actually blasting out the white and actually vaporizing the clear. There's old Mike.
I found the video, but yeah, so he was using an acrylic trophy. So he's reverse engraving, and he's going out of focus. So it's going to be a clear acrylic. Mm-hmm. So you can see here, it's pretty clear. It's not
quite
white.
Clear, yeah.
And then he's putting in the acrylic paint. Is that what you're talking about, James?
Yes. Yeah. So the clearer the engraving on acrylic, the better transfer of the color to the other side of the material that you're going to get.
Yep.
And then he uses a squeegee here. I like the phone book trick, the Ceresny method, as I call it, where I've collected phone books over the years, and you just rub it across a damp phone book page to clean the back of it. But yeah, this is the clear. Now you see there's a few stripes in there. Now if he maybe would have done a second pass on that Trotec, quite out of focus, he may have melted some of those white striation lines in the engraving on the thick part of the logo, and he maybe could have made more of a window.
I think without wishing to get this too complex, keep in mind too that matrices like this can, as James is saying, open you up to cool techniques. The one that Lev and James are talking about right now, if you should be so lucky as to have a flex laser near you or a fiber laser, you can also use on, let's say, for example, we did a video last year with a mirror acrylic. And basically what the mirror acrylic has is, it's just like a clear acrylic, really, when you break it down, with a film on the back of it that is essentially like a mirror reflective surface. So if you use a fiber laser, you can actually engrave through the clear acrylic. This is an out of focus fiber laser, and only sort of eliminate. God, it's very tough to explain. I think James would probably do a better job. But essentially, what you're doing is you're only hitting the acrylic. It's only coming in focus once it's through most of the acrylic and hitting the back. Is that sort of
no? The what happens is the fiber laser sees clear materials just like me and you do. It sees right through it. Oh. Whereas a CO2 sees a clear material as an opaque object. It can't go through a clear acrylic. You could probably, don't do this at home, but you could probably put your hand under a clear piece of acrylic,
engrave
the acrylic, and nothing's going to happen to your hand. It would be scary, but in theory, don't do it. Don't do it. It could work.
Yeah.
A fiber laser is going to see right through that. Like radio waves are the same sort of thing as light waves. It's like, in theory, and radio waves go through houses, right? True. They go through rooms, and we can't see through that. But a fiber laser, it can see through clear objects where a CO2 can't. So the fiber laser is going to shoot right through your clear object, and it's going to hit whatever's behind that, and whether that's a mirror, and then what it does is it releases the bond of the mirror material to the glass, and it's scratching away that mirror material. And what else you can do that's fun, now that we're on that subject, and I can speak for 30 seconds on it, is you can put materials on clear stuff, especially glass. You can put metal paint, and you can actually create a deposition of that paint or that metal to the glass using a fiber laser shooting right through the glass. So what we used to do is put like a copper sheets or gold leaf, and then as the laser shoots through the material, it actually will deposit some of that material into the glass, and you can create a real nice effect doing that. Or you can paint the back of glass or acrylic and use a fiber laser to get rid of the paint on the back by shooting through it, and that way you're not affecting the glass or the acrylic, but just taking away the paint in the back. But anyway, I'm digressing.
No, we have that's exactly where I was going to go. We have actually a piece in our showroom that Mike did many years ago, which is I have to stop referring to, like, every time we refer to Mike, it's always old
many
Mike,
years ago.
Many years ago. This video before paintbrushes were invented, so he's using a squeegee. I wanted to show you guys this. This is what we were sort of discussing just a minute ago, where you're using exactly what James is describing. So this is a mirror acrylic, but really, if you were to look at it, so under a microscope, as you say, there's sort of a clear acrylic with a mirror. Oh my God, the beard. That should have come with a staff, that beard. What we're doing is we're sort of going right through the material. When Josephine engraves it here, she reverse engraves the back and then is able to paint it. But the piece, as James is describing, and the piece that we have in the showroom that Mike did, is actually just a mirror. It's a mirror that he used basically the same technique, but did it in the way that James is describing, going through the mirror and removing the sort of paint off the back of just like a crappy hardware store mirror, and then paint filling it so that it has this beautiful eagle on the front of it. But it's just it still functions as a regular mirror sort of across the rest of the piece.
Sorry, I just wanted to bring a comment here by Leah that was good. James, I mean, generally speaking, when would you want to paint fill on the front versus the back? Do you always want to do reverse engraving on acrylic and do paint fill on the back so people don't scratch it by mistake? Or
No, I mean, you can get some great effects where you can engrave the background with the forest and the mountains and the lake, and on the front side engrave the logo or
you just gave us a great idea for a project.
Yeah. Exactly. So I've done four layers before by taking 2 half-inch pieces of acrylic, and I did mountains on the back of the first one, forest on the front of the second one, sailboats on the back of the first one, and then the logo on the front, and
Godzilla then on the second one. That's
exactly, yeah. So you can play with 3 dimensions that way, yep. And then strap them together with some 1-inch frame or something like that, and now you have a beautiful little four-piece thing. And then you could put a poem on it or something. I don't know, but I mean, just get creative.
Bringing it back around, though, that sort of thing and this sort of testing is exactly why MHCs like these are cool, because even though they're very sort of basic and something that you should do just to get the general idea, of working with the material, they can also work to try out something new, like James is describing. I mean, like if you want to stack 4 pieces of acrylic and then figure out the exact depth that you need for each one, a matrix like this is what's going to tell you. I mean, I imagine James started it with something very similar to this, with the 4 pieces of maybe scrap at this point stacked on top of each other, and just measured how far down it was going on each one, and then sort of noted where it was, and then off to the races kind of thing, right?
Yeah. Can I also just come back to this trolleys with the Z offset?
Yeah.
I'm gonna do the cuts now too, but just notice. I mean, Mike has a video where he's going through. James, I mean, when you engrave trolleys, you almost never go in focus, right? You drop it a little bit out of focus for this kind of black. It's a darker black than this kind of more grayish engraving.
And the same reason why we put it out of focus for paint fill is because now we're getting a slicker, meltier image. But on the other hand, the more melty, clear, slick image you get, the less detail you're going to get. You're always going to trade off detail for slickness on trolleys too. But most times, I mean, I usually do like a 40 thou out of focus. If you go too out of focus, your tiny letters are gone.
Right. Yeah, like this video Mike did, he was just showing the out of focus. I mean, this top piece here, it's in focus. But one thing I noticed about out of focus and not out of focus, sorry, let me just get that, is that you generate more heat, right, when you go out of focus. So if you have a big job on trolleys and you're going way out of focus, that thing is gonna like warp up.
The fins in particular.
So I mean, you definitely want to use a double-sided adhesive tape to glue it to a steel table if you're doing something like a thin, or you're going really out of focus on a lot of engraving space. Correct me if I'm wrong, James.
No, that's actually true. I wonder if anyone's ever taken an ultra super high speed camera to a laser shot and watched as each pulse hits the material. That'd be a very interesting video to do. I wonder where we could rent a ultra high speed camera.
Patent pending.
Patent pending. They'll steal my idea.
Really, really quickly, I wanted to point out. So this is a video from totally discussing exactly what James is discussing here too. The balance between being in super high focus and sort of out of focus. This is a great video, a laser hack from Laser Dave, Trotec Laser USA, that you can check out. He's describing using out of focus as a way to increase the speed of what you're doing. So this is a super, super high DPI piece, but even at a 10 times time lapse, like the resulting engraving is beautiful, but it takes 2 minutes to do. So what he teaches you is to pull the piece out of focus and then to run a very, very, very small cut line around the edge of your piece, like essentially as an outline here, as he says. And then that restores the really sharp edges, so you don't get that sort of fogginess that comes from sort of the out of focus engraving. But you can use this as a trick to sort of speed up your engraving while still, and it looks, I mean, look, at the very end, you can sort of see the difference between the two, I would argue. But realistically, considering that you can do this in like a third of the time, pretty incredible, right? Given that, so again, out of focus gives you access to some amazing things. Also, head crashes. Be very, very careful when you're doing out of focus engraving.
Using negative numbers. Trotec tries to save you from head crash by by limiting your negative number to a certain point per lens. If you start using negative numbers, that means the head's coming up. I've never crashed it yet, but one day I'm sure. Dave is my laser hero.
He's a wizard.
He's so awesome. That trick that he was using on the acrylic's great. Like that's a brilliant idea. We used to use something similar with wood, not for the same reason, but you can make your text pop out when you're engraving wood by engraving it, really fast, and then using that little vector line around all of the text to make it look like the wood is a bit more 3D than it actually is, and you can trick the viewer into thinking that it's a lot deeper than it actually is.
Absolutely. I would always encourage you, and again, I'll come back to, what we've said this whole time, with safety first and foremost in your mind. Experiment with your laser 100%. The only way to get to learn this, like any piece of software, like any new tool, is to play with it and to really do your best to, take whatever sort of basic foundation we might have given you either in the laser database or whatever it is, and to use those as guidelines, but nothing more than guidelines. It really is just sort of there to give you a first step on the ladder, or a first, step heading up the mountain of success.
It's true. No, it's true. I just started mountain biking, downhill mountain biking, and I know nothing about it, nothing. And so, in order to get better at it and to know how to do it, you can watch me going up the access trails, not going down the main trails. Before I go there, I want to know how a mountain bike works. I've never even ridden one before this, and so that's why it's important to get to know your machinery, and this is the best way to get to know your machinery. These are the access trails of your laser, is to just run on scrap pieces of wood, and doing useful projects like making your mom a nice wooden spoon. Sorry, Mom, I didn't make you a wooden spoon yet. But making a nice wooden spoon is great. But this is really going to test you and create knowledge for your laser.
Absolutely. And, we're just hitting the top of the hour here, so I'll come back around to something that Johnny pointed out that I think is also a very good point, which is, at the end of the day, if you ever have a question, you know who to come to. Realistically, I hope you'll reach out to, myself or to Lev or to James.
Just call Johnny, everyone.
I do, or Laser Dave.
I just want to finish off with this cutting test. So everything actually cut through with these power settings, but so we can honestly say you can use the fastest power setting to cut this particular piece of wood. Yep. But you'll see in like Josephine's video where sometimes the wood wouldn't cut through, or maybe there's too much, like you're going too slow, and then this is the other side of the wood. So you would actually get burn marks on the other side of the wood if you're going too slow. So this is why you would want the cut test, just right. FYI.
And the thing is too, that's a very good point. Wood is a good exemplar of this, because if you want to cut through with as little burning or scorching on the back, yeah.
Well, besides you, Johnny, yeah,
we can have more than one laser hero.
Exactly.
It's a team.
Exactly.
Laser Avengers. At the end of the day, yeah. At the end of the day, it's another good way of figuring out. Obviously, there's tricks like masking your wood and things like that. But you can see at the 1.25 that Lev's cut, there's very little scorching on the back, right? Because he's managed to get through the wood fast enough without any sort of burning or reflections. So, just another exemplar of a cool, trick and tip. I was just going to quickly mention, if you're in BC and you want to learn more about our lasers, you want to learn about, maybe replacing your laser, you want to talk about, 21 years in the business, James is your man. You can reach out to him at the number, the email below.
Can I? Sorry, just one last thing. I know we're at the top of the hour, but we get this a lot of requests from people. I have this type of wood. What power should I use? I get this all the time, James. I'm sure you get it all the time. People think there's a specific power for a specific, piece of material. Mm-hmm. And my advice is always play around. If you have extra materials, scrap materials, play around with power settings. There's no exact. Obviously there's a perfect power setting for that specific wood for your specific laser, but it's not universal. Where you would call and say, well, what specific settings do I need for? I have alder, 1/4 inch. Am I right, James?
Yes, yeah, as specific as you can be. Like, I get these questions daily for sure, like more than daily, perhaps. Is that what setting should I use for X or Y? And I'm a busy guy. I try to answer everyone's emails, but if you can add in something like what is the setting that you might use for 1/4 inch thick alder with a like finish coating on it, and I'm trying to achieve this. So as specific as you can be, I can answer your question a lot faster.
Yeah.
And you'll probably get your question answered. Period.
If you get your question answered.
Yeah. If you can be specific, then I can answer your question quickly. If you can't be specific, I'm driving around from place to place doing mobile demos. I'm under the gun time wise most of the time, and so if you can be specific, then I can pull over, quickly answer your question in about five words and continue on again. So that's with every one of your Trotec techs and the salespeople and customer service people. Mm-hmm. We all know a lot about this stuff, and the more specific you can be on your initial question, the faster and more detailed your answer is going to be.
Huge. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I try to teach this to all of my new laser people that I see is be very specific when you're asking a question. Try add details that you don't even think might be
relevant,
might be essential to the answer, and you'll get a much more detailed, specific answer.
And no matter what James or a tech or a sales guy tells you, I mean, they're still human. I mean, it's still a very general kind of environment. If you do something like this, you get specific results, and you could see and touch it and feel it. So that's just on that note as well.
I was going to say, James will fix it in 5 words, as he said, but the 5 words might be, download the matrices from YouTube.
Exactly.
Because the thing is too, is like, it's the teach a man to fish kind of thing, right? It's like,
exactly.
if we teach you how to play with your laser and experiment, then you can use it and reuse it and reuse it and reuse it. Okay. You know what? Thank you so much again to everyone who joined us today. If you're watching this on YouTube, then definitely leave us a comment. Let you know what you like, what you don't like. Be sure to join us again next week on Friday. I know we've got another great stream planned for you. Ruby, the release of Ruby is barreling forward. It's coming up in July. It's really, really exciting. We've got some other great content on the channel. Obviously, some great videos with James and a certain van. I won't mention what they are, but I think you'll know. If you don't, definitely check them out. We've got a new one that we just posted this week that is really important and touches on actually something James was mentioning earlier today. I won't spoil it, but it rhymes with, clean your laser.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a very specific rhyme.
I mean, but it does. Yeah. I mean, you can't fault me. That actually is another stream that's going to be coming up here in not too long. But regardless, for today, I really hope you enjoyed it. Definitely, again, reach out to us, YouTube at troteclaser.ca if you have any questions, any concerns, and we will see you guys again next week. I'm already looking forward to it. Take care, everybody.